Pemberlakuan status darurat dan pembatasan sosial berskala besar sejak bulan Maret lalu memberikan dampak signifikan terhadap dunia pendidikan. Semua lembaga pendidikan baik sekolah maupun perguruan tinggi meliburkan sementara kegiatan belajar mengajar secara tatap muka dan menggantinya dengan pembelajaran virtual ataupun online. Kegiatan belajar mengajar melalui jaringan internet ini merupakan lompatan besar dalam dunia pendidikan Indonesia dan tentu saja memiliki banyak tantangannya. Nah, lalu bagaimana sebaiknya mengelola pembelajaran virtual yang tepat di masa pandemi dan juga bagaimana upaya meningkatkan mutu pendidikan di tanah air agar sejajar dengan negara lain. Insight kali ini akan membahasnya bersama saya, Desi Anwar.
7 bulan sudah Indonesia menghadapi pandemi COVID-19. Seluruh aktivitas belajar mengajar harus dilakukan dari rumah. Untuk itu, pendampingan orang tua dalam mengembangkan kemampuan kognitif dan mental anak menjadi hal yang penting. Hal ini disampaikan Menteri Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan Nadiem Makarim dalam webinar menjaga kesehatan mental anak pada September lalu. Nadiem menyebut, orang tua harus menjadi contoh yang baik dan tidak boleh mengalami stres dalam membimbing anak belajar.
Besar sekali resiko anak-anak kebosanan dan kesepian di masa pandemi ini. Inilah kenapa begitu pentingnya kita melakukan berbagai macam aktivitas yang menstimulasi baik dari sisi kognitif maupun dari sisi emosional. Aktivitas-aktivitas seperti membaca bersama, aktivitas seperti bermain bersama, aktivitas seperti berbincang-bincang dan berinteraksi dengan anak-anak kita merupakan suatu hal yang sangat penting bagi kesehatan mental anak kita.
Namun, stres tidak hanya bisa dirasakan oleh orang tua, tetapi juga pada anak. Agar bisa mengatasi stres, anak memerlukan orang tua sebagai teman bicara.
Gitu. Jadi dia ngerasa aman dulu, baru setelah itu ajak untuk nyari strategi, oke, kamu nggak bisa, berarti apa yang perlu kita kerjain biar kamu jadi bisa. Oke, kamu kangen sama teman kamu. Jadi kita ngapain dong? Padahal ketemu itu nggak boleh. Nah, itu tuh next step. Setelah si emosinya sudah berhasil terkeluarkan, karena anak merasa kita adalah lingkungan yang aman untuk dia mengekspresikan semua emosinya, termasuk rasa stresnya tadi.
Akibat pandemi COVID-19, para pelajar di Indonesia harus mengikuti pembelajaran jarak jauh. Hingga kini, belum ada kepastian kapan belajar secara tatap muka bisa kembali dilakukan. Oleh sebab itu, penting memastikan lembaga pendidikan, pelajar, dan orang tua bisa melakukan pembelajaran virtual dengan efektif dan nyaman.
Ya, belajar secara virtual tentu saja memberikan tantangan berbeda, bukan hanya untuk para guru dan orang tua, tapi juga tentu bagi para siswa. Survei UNICEF menyatakan selama pandemi ini sebanyak 66% dari 60 juta siswa di 34 provinsi Indonesia mengaku merasa tidak nyaman saat belajar di rumah. Nah, salah satu penyebabnya adalah siswa mengaku mengalami kekurangan bimbingan dari guru mereka. Nah, bagaimana upaya lembaga pendidikan mengatasi masalah ini? Di studio telah hadir bersama saya Mustafa Geversin, Director of Sampurna Academy, dan Marshall Short, President of Sampurna University. Mustafa, Marshall, welcome to the studio. And
Thank you.
we are observing all the necessary health protocols. Ini semua kita harus tetap ya mematuhi protokol kesehatan, menggunakan face shield, menjaga jarak. You know, we cannot stress enough the importance of us being healthy in this COVID times. Now, one of the victims, so to say, during this COVID-19 has been the education system. And as we've seen in Jakarta itself, particularly since the partial lockdown back in March, until now, I mean, literally 6 months later, we're still, there's still no sort of 100% return to a face-to-face or normal school, as it were. And Mustafa, you as the director of Sampurna Academy, can you tell us, share with us a little bit, how has the academy been coping in the last 6 months? What were the biggest challenges and how has it impacted?
Correct. I concur what you said. It is exactly the problem that with our students that we are facing today. Our students have been out since March, mid-March, as you mentioned. And as Sampurna Academy, we were maybe lucky or we were maybe ready for this one. Mm-hmm. The reason being that we already have a lot of technology integration in our schools. So students starting from grade 3 and up, they already have their one-on-one laptops. They use Chromebooks and laptops in the secondary. And they have been using Google Classroom with our students, with our teachers. They have been having their assignments and returning assignments. All what we do during the virtual school has been happening before, even though it wasn't this extent. But it was happening. So what we found out just before the term break, that we found out that the schools were going to close. Face-to-face learning was not available. So then what we did is we planned it, just extended the scope of what we are doing. We call all the parents, all the students, did the training for them to show our parents, because even though students are...
So you did the training for...
Correct. Indeed, the students...
How did you do the
before
training?
It was just right before the break when the schools were not, the PSBB was not in effect yet. So we called some of them to school, some of them via online still. We explain our parents what students are doing. Students are already accustomed. They know this ritual and they know how to do things. But we need to explain this one to our parents. Hey, your children are already doing this one. This is how you can monitor it. This is how you can support them. This is how you can communicate with us when there's an issue. Or all those 10 yards that we explained them. And they were happy actually to see how things are happening. And
but how quickly did it? Because obviously this is completely unprecedented,
Correct.
both for the teachers, the students, and the parents, obviously.
Correct. We started in January, end of January. You remember all the news
Yes,
that
from
has
Wuhan
happening.
and so
We
you were already
started
preparing.
We started preparing. We were ready. Just it was a matter of time from the government, the announcement coming on board. In a week time, we had to do all the training with the teachers, with the parents, with the students. We went through that one. Luckily, it was just right the break time, so we had the 1 week time before giving an additional break to students. So it was good that we see that this is happening, and we have seen since then until now this is continuing. And just recent survey shows that 97% of our parents are happy the quality of education that they are getting.
97%.
Correct.
This is a survey that you did.
Just we did with our parents recently. And that shows that they are happy with this one. They see that they have 96% are very happy with the support that their children are getting during the online learning. And we renewed this training actually right before the new school year start in July. And we did not stop with the parents. This time we involved also nannies. Because for the younger kids, we have the ELC kids. And
Right.
we call the nannies too, so that because parents are working, some of them. And they are busy, even though if they are work from home, they are still busy, and somebody needs to attend those younger children that even though they are kind of competent with the technology, not that much. They are very young kids. We are talking about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years,
Absolutely,
8 years old.
where it's
So
not
that's the
really
reason-
feasible to do anything
Exactly,
online at that
exactly.
age, right?
At that time, then the nannies have been helping them to handle the technology and help with the communicating with the teachers. At least we give them projects and they need to videotape them to upload it in the system. So that has been a great experience. Yes, I know our students miss their teachers. They miss their friends. We miss them a lot as well. But academically speaking, the results are there. We can see that one.
So at least in terms of the technological side of it, because also this is one of the biggest challenges for many schools that are not prepared technologically. But at least that's all right. You have the technology to do online learning. But when it comes to putting together the curriculum and also preparing the teacher, I mean, how did you manage that? Because this is something also that's quite new for the teachers. I mean, they have to actually adopt to this new system of teaching.
I see where you're coming from. When I'm looking from my side, most schools may have been having the same issues, troubles, but we did not. The reason is our teachers have been using it. they have been already implementing that during the regular days. So that was part of our life. Yes, it wasn't this extent. We were not teaching everything online. We were still inside the classroom within the four walls explaining things. But there were pieces of this technology integration where they use flipped learning, where they use the blended learning, where the assignments are submitted through the Google Classroom already. And the only place we add maybe is the Google Meet. And every day they find something new. Oh, this is also possible to do online. Then they share it on with their friends and with the other colleagues. So it is continuously improving. Even with this case, we are 97% approval
Yes.
rate.
The students' performance hasn't
To
been
me,
affected.
we still have 3% maybe more to improve.
But what about overall students' performance? I mean, it's,
When we look at the student performance, it is depends on how you are measuring the performance. We change.
but obviously you can't have tests, you know, at least face it. Do you still have tests, or do you
Yes, we
still
do.
have performance?
Indeed,
that's
we do.
still-
That is we do. The idea is we did not change our learning outcomes.
Okay.
So what we did is academic expectation, the high expectation that we have from our teachers and from our students are still there. It's not changed. And then when we look, we finish our report cards this week. So the students are, when I look the grades of the students, even though with the same learning outcomes, I don't see any drop. The averages are at least what we had in the regular day or
I see.
above.
Okay.
So if that is the case, I can assume that, kids are already learning. And you can also measure the success or the results of this one by engagement of students.
Okay, well,
When I
that's-
look at the 96% participation and the teachers' testimonials that they are learning, that's great.
So that's good. It's good to hear. So the parents are happy that the teachers are actually, it's not a great shock to them, and also the students haven't actually suffered in terms of their performance. We'll take a little break,
Sure.
Mustafa, and tetaplah bersama kami. Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Ya, Insight with Desi Anwar masih ditemani oleh Mustafa Guversin, Director of Sampurna Academy, dan Marshall Short, President of Sampurna University. Kita mendiskusikan mengenai tantangan ya, belajar mengajar pada zaman pandemi ini. And it looks like, Mustafa, from the academy, not too much, not too many challenges, and the parents are happy, and the students are happy, and the teachers are adapting. How about you, Marshall, from the Sampurna University itself? Obviously, there has to be something that is quite challenging, and it must have some kind of impact on the performance, whether of the school or of the university itself.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of important things to think about here. We're part of the same school system, and one of the philosophical underpinnings that we have as a school system is that we want students to be able to learn anytime, anywhere. And so whether you're talking about the academy or the university, it means that we've always had this very strong technology framework in place to allow students to learn on their own time, on mobile devices, really anywhere that they choose to learn. So from a technology perspective, we've been very well prepared for the pandemic. And I have to share a little story with you. I spent most of my career at the University of Houston in Texas, and I was in charge of something called instructional continuity. Instructional continuity was really for hurricanes, in my case, cyclones,
Yeah.
which we would
Which
get
is
on
really
the-
a challenge in that part of the
real
world.
challenge
obviously,
where
yeah.
your entire communities are shut down for days on end. Now, nothing like this, but when you think about the way you respond to a crisis, an environmental disaster, a global pandemic, it can be very disruptive unless you've planned ahead. And I think this also gets back to something that Mustafa had mentioned. All of our faculty go through training using educational technology every year. It's not something that we just started doing now. We've been doing it for the last 5 years. The other thing too has to do with perspective. I taught my first online class in 1998. Wasn't very good, admittedly, But we've
The
learned.
technology was a lot, a lot less sophisticated then.
And that was
Things
a
were
lot less
slower.
sophisticated too. So
And the
you learn a
modem's not
lot.
as-
You learn a lot. And so when you look at the university, you look at our partners in the U.S. that we work with very closely, Broward College in Florida, the University of Arizona in Arizona. Collectively, you're talking 25 years of experience teaching online. So when the university was shut down, we activated the instructional continuity plan. We literally suspended operations, I believe it was for 5 days, to give faculty time to do what they knew how to do, which was to update their course syllabus, upload content, sort of pivot to move everything online. We reopened on Monday and finished out the term. And again, we had really great results. We used the best learning management system in the world. It's the one
And you
used
mentioned
by-
some platforms there that you use as well.
Yeah, we use Canvas, and it's what Oxford uses, and Cambridge, and Harvard, and Stanford, and UC Berkeley. So it's a really
And that's been reliable. I mean, obviously connectivity must also be an issue, right? from this,
connectivity is an issue which we address with for our students who are remote and who we support. They have access to not just laptops, but also data connections. And again, I think this is a good time to really praise the government for also providing additional allocations to educators as well as students to support them during these challenging times. So yes, it's been a challenge, but here's what's important to me as an educator is at the end of the semester, again, we had over 96% attendance and engagement rates.
And over 90%.
Over 96% attendance
96%,
engagement rates, which is actually better than we have in a regular classroom. So that's quite surprising, but very happy to see that. And again, the most important thing of all is we saw no significant difference in learning outcomes. And again, that's sort of our North Star as an educator when you're transitioning from one platform to another, when you're transitioning from online to offline. You don't want to see really significant differences in learning outcomes, and we didn't.
And I think also because, I mean, we're now in the era of the internet of all things, digital of all things anyway, with or without the pandemic. And it's just this whole pandemic issue is actually accelerating that aspect of relying more and more on technology. But what's really has changed in your experience during this pandemic? The stuff that is happening now that didn't happen before the pandemic.
Yeah,
Because education is not just about technology, it's not
course
just about
not, no.
attendance, it's all the other things.
It is.
About.
It is absolutely all the other things. And again, that's a really great point. Look, when it comes to education and using our curriculum, using our learning objectives, doing our assessments, so much of that can be done online. The one thing that has changed, and we hear it from students, I know you do too, you hear it from parents too probably, it's really the social emotional aspects that are most challenging. I have a student advisory board which I've reached out to in the last couple of weeks. 90% of them plus happy with what they get online from an educational perspective, but every one of them says, I miss my friends. I want to meet my lecturer in person. I don't want to meet him on Zoom. So it's really the social, emotional piece of it that's so challenging to replicate online.
But we'll take another break at this moment. Jadi jangan kemana-mana dulu. Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Ya, bersama Insight with Desi Anwar kita lanjutkan perbincangan mengenai bagaimana ya sekolah menyiasati ya pada saat pandemi ini. Mustafa Guversin dari Director of Sampurna Academy dan Marshall Schott, President of Sampurna University, berbagi pengalaman dan juga tantangan pada saat COVID-19 ini. Tadi Marshall Mustafa, you raised a very important point, I think, especially with the younger students. Part of being at school, part of going to school is going to school, meeting all your friends, and being, all the other social skills that you learn. And I'm glad to hear that, a psychologist is also now being sort of involved in order to deal with these very important mental health issues. What about at university? Because especially, when it's the last year at university and then you worry about what's going to happen and you feel you're missing out, or you don't know what's next, and with universities closing and everything is online. So what's missing and what's being addressed when it comes to the very important?
It is a difficult challenge, and I will say this. I mean, it's sort of intuitive. University kids get stressed out all the time.
Yes,
right?
I remember.
and so
those
the pandemic obviously
essays.
has added a whole nother element to the level of anxiety and stress that students are feeling. So what we've done at the university, all of the services that we used to provide on the campus, where you could walk in and talk to a counselor or talk to an advisor.
Or have coffee in the common room with your friends and discuss.
Yeah, so we've got these wraparound services that we call them, and they're all available online. So counselors are available online. What's really interesting, and I think it's important to emphasize here, is kids are pretty resilient, and a lot of the kids they're forming their own networks, they're forming their own clubs and organizations online. And then I've also got and this is really neat, I've got a student from UCLA who is majoring in psychology at UCLA, working with our full-time counselor, has formed a club this semester to develop online resources for university students in stress. And so their goal is to provide sort of some self-help resources that students can go access anytime. And then obviously, if needed, they can reach out and make an appointment with a counselor. The other thing I want to mention, though, and this gets back to the technology part of it that's really important. So the learning management system that we use is we're able to track student performance in real time. We can see if they're doing their work and if their attendance is okay. We can check their grades at any time. What it does is it flags not just academic issues, but non-academic issues. And so we will reach out to those students who are demonstrating at-risk signs, and sometimes it's academic.
And how do you do that? Do you involve the parents as well, or do you?
We go to the student first. We're always going to go to the student first, and then depending on the situation, we would also involve the parents. But the point is, sometimes when a student's struggling in a class, it's not an academic issue; it's a non-academic issue, and so this gives us the ability to intervene much more quickly on the data that we're getting from our online learning platform, so we can ask that student, are you okay? Would you like to talk to a counselor? Can we discuss what's happening in your
Are there
course?
many instances of this? I mean, what's your feedback? What's the current state of your students at the moment? How are they feeling after 6 months of this?
The students who started with us in March and are continuing their education are feeling a little bit more anxiety as opposed to the students who just started in August. The students who started in August, at least at this point, they're still making that transition from high school to university. Some of them indicate that they really like the fact that this is new and different. They've never really learned like this before. But they all say, again, we miss that social emotional connection with our peers, with the lecturers, and with other individuals at the university.
But are you worried that this might impact them in the future? Maybe this is also a question I'll ask you, Mustafa, because this is a crucial, for 6 months, and we don't know how long this thing is going to last. It might last until, we don't know when the vaccine is. It may continue. Is this something that, as an educator, worries you, these non-academic issues?
It worries me a lot. I'm a lot more concerned about some of these estimates that you see globally about 1 in 3 children is going to be left behind as a result of the pandemic. I think that our students, again, with those wraparound services that I've talked about, we've created a safety net in a way. We've created access to resources that probably a lot of students don't have access to. And so, yes, I obviously worry about our students at the university. I'm a lot more concerned, honestly, about those students who don't have access to these kinds of resources in a virtual environment. I think it's pretty obvious that students who are, again, when you look at the digital divide, when you look at
Absolutely,
this-
and Indonesia, this is something that's real. I mean,
course.
you know, some of these students, they don't even have Wi-Fi connection
Right.
at home, and they have to go outside and find, you know, a connection.
Find
Or
a
they don't
connection,
have,
yeah.
they don't have laptops. I mean, is this something that you also work together in as Sampurna, working together with other?
We do. I mean, we work with a lot of different
Institutions.
agencies to support students who we've admitted who are from somewhat remote areas, and so we'll provide them with hardware. We'll provide them with data packages. Sometimes we'll even work with the regencies to make sure that those students have access to the online learning platform and to our resources. Because again, we've got students from Aceh to Papua
Yes,
who
and
are students at the university, and many of them are disadvantaged when it comes to digital access.
Because digital divide still is very much a problem in this country. The infrastructure is still not equal, and of course, when you depend so much on technology
Right.
for the quality of the education, Mustafa, what really worries you about children missing out? I mean, you know, let's forget about the technological aspect at the moment, you know, grades and also, you know, things that they learn, but a lot of the learning stuff that you learn at school is...
What worries me more about is how they are going to adapt to regular schools afterwards. Their regular is changing right now. Their regular is becoming online already. Just to eliminate some of those, with our academic team, with our counselors team, we are already putting some plans when they come back, how to do those kind of activities to engage them more in person rather than online, how to make that happen when they return back. That's already in part of it. And the second thing is, during this time when it is online, our older kids help the other ones. Just an example, early September we had a literacy week. 1 week long, it's all about the literacy, all about the storytelling, all about language and the promoting the language. Our kids on the upper grades, let's say my 4th grade kid is teaching the younger ELC, the kindergarten kids, K1 kids. So she goes and tries to read them a story. But now we were doing this when we were offline in the campuses, but at that time you go there physically and explain it. This time it is online. Now this kid has to find different ways to explain this because she needs to get the attention of the young kids. Then she puts some visuals for it, some other different ways to make it happen. So
That is a challenge.
This is challenge, but this also making them resilient and finding ways how to overcome these obstacles. So it is actually teaching them more in one way, but that personal touch, we are making some plans when they come back to make it happen. And we will continue doing this home calls to make sure that we are talking to students, we are talking to parents in person.
And
at
how
least
is their
over the
mental
phone.
health overall? Are you doing a survey on the students' happiness or their... you
We
know,
have
for the
one
last 6
going
months?
out right now. We don't have the results, but what I see is, in general, our parents and our students are embracing the change at this point. It has been 6 months almost. They
don't have much
they
of a
know,
choice,
yes,
yeah.
there's not much choice actually. So they are trying to overcome the obstacles, and we try to give them the positive side of it. And after school hours, right now we are doing club activities with the kids. So the kids are still enjoying unstructured time with their friends, even though it's online.
Okay,
At least
I guess the key
some
is,
touch.
you know, how we adapt to this situation. And it's interesting that you say that they may need to adapt when classes go back, you know, to being in a physical, you know, face-to-face environment. We take another little break, Marshall, Mustafa, but we will come back. Setelah yang berikut ini, tetaplah bersama Insight with Desi Anwar. Ya, Ya, kembali bersama Insight with Desi Anwar. Kita kali ini ditemani oleh Mustafa Guversin, Director of Sampurna Academy, dan juga Marshall Shaw, President of Sampurna University. Ternyata tantangan bagi sebuah sekolah ya pada zaman pandemi ini ya tergantung dengan apakah mereka sudah terbiasa melakukan pelajaran online dan juga apakah memiliki teknologi yang tepat, dan juga tentu saja bila semua ini dipenuhi dan disiapkan. And I think by the sound of it, even before the COVID itself, you know, your school is already sort of, you know, technologically advanced, and online learning is not something new, and it's not like most of the schools in Indonesia that still need help in that direction. Now, Mustafa, give us the typical school day. What does it look like nowadays when, you know, the children, they still have to attend, obviously, and attendance is 96%, but what does it mean attending school these
Attending
days?
school is, I have to cover 16 years of span, so it's kind of different for each of them. Let me put the bulk of it. If it is grade 1 and up, elementary grades and up all the way to 12th grade, they start about 8 o'clock, and the students will have a check-in with their homeroom teacher. The homeroom teacher will check with them how things are going, ask questions, they will joke around and see how was the yesterday, have information sessions, and then check, oh, you are missing this homework, you are missing this homework, when are you going to submit, is everything all right, do you need support? Those kind of well-being checking first, about 10-15 minutes with all the classroom. And after that, they will get a break, and the students will start with their sessions. And then they will have about 2 hours of, I'm talking about the still older kids, yeah? So they have about 2 hours of class with the online teacher. Most our classes, not most, all our classes are synchronous. That means teachers are always present during the class. So students, teachers will do some kind of teaching a little bit, either review from yesterday and do all the instructional pedagogies and what they need. And then they will give some kind of assignments for them to work on. The teachers will be there as a support, and the kids will be doing their work. Sometimes it's a collaborative with other friends as a group work, or sometimes it's individual works, and they will finish the content. And the students in high school, they go about 3 o'clock. The elementary kids go about 2:30. And when we go to younger ages, grade K2 and below, they is lower, less hours.
Right.
So our 2 years old, they are too young. For them, I only have maybe a check-in session and maybe activities for them about 30 minutes, 2 sessions that they will have at different times.
So, Mustafa, how many hours on average, say like a fifth grader or a sixth grader, spend online?
They spend about 5 to 6 hours.
Looking at a screen?
It doesn't mean that they always look at the screen. Their class time at there, let me say what we do is we try to minimize the screen time. The reason is it is dangerous for the kids.
I was just about to say this is one of the challenges as well.
Exactly, I need to be there as a teacher to explain the concept. Once I explain it, if I need them to work on their book on some assignments, then I'll be available there. They are still available. Their screen is there, but they are working on their work. And when they have questions, they will turn and they say, okay, I have this question, would you help me? And then the teacher will try to go and help them
and
one
it
by
works
one.
okay? I mean, any difficulties, any challenges? I mean, is this something that...
It is challenging. Sometimes kids will drop, or
Yeah,
sometimes they pretend that they drop.
Or do you get connections that suddenly...
Connections are a problem. Sometimes
Connection is a problem.
That's correct, because internet liability is not exactly the same everywhere
Yeah,
and
that's
every day.
frustrating, right?
Like today in the morning, it was a big problem that Google dropped. It wasn't Indonesians' problem, it was the main center of the Google. Like about 20 minutes, Google Classroom was just completely shut down. So
that's also a headache.
those kind of things happening, yes. But as I said, the students are aware of it, the teachers are aware of it. So once there is no connection, they know what to do. So, and we don't want them to be always looking at the screen.
But you still give
do
them
some others.
homeworks, I mean...
Correct. They do, we even give them exams.
Wow.
There are different ways of doing this.
So yeah, I feel quite sorry. There's more to this. It's very challenging now. Then
It is indeed.
Marshall, how? And in terms of the kind of skills that you have to provide nowadays, now we have all these technology, and of course, and I know from our past meeting that STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and this is something that is actually now you can feel the importance of focusing on these things. And tell us a little bit about necessary skills that we need
Well,
to.
so the university is a little bit different. Obviously, kids are a little bit older. The lecturers teaching online are, they kind of have to. They're not the sage on the stage. It's about directed learning, right? It's about facilitating learning, and so their screen time's typically going to be a lot less, and they've got more flexibility. Most of the students are going to be, maybe online in a live session, maybe 15, 18 hours a week, right? And so during that time, the lecturer may give a short presentation. It's really about facilitating, okay, so this is what you need to read, this is what you need to do. Yeah. Here's an activity that you need to complete. Here's some preparation for an assessment that we're going to do in a couple of weeks. So it's I'm not going to say it's like coaching and mentoring, it's about facilitating learning, right? So
it's not about the teacher in front of the classroom and then telling kids how to.
Can't be. Can you imagine 3 hours staring at a screen, listening to somebody? We know that's not an effective way to teach kids.
No, and also you don't have to with all the technology.
We don't.
You can just Google everything
one of
these
the
days.
really nice things that I've gotten back from my student advisory group is that they really appreciate the fact that the lecturers, they give them what they need to know in that live session. They like being empowered to kind of go learn on their own. Because look, at the end of the day, if we can teach students to be lifelong learners, that's a huge win for us. Obviously getting the degree is important, but making lifelong learners is really important to us too. And so this is actually helping to build that kind of skill in our students, which is really, really tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with technology, and I think with, the professions will need more and more sort of thinkers, critical thinkers, people that can work together, communicate, collaborate. I mean, this is something that technology will open up for us. What are the skills now with this kind of crisis do you think is important for young people to learn?
Yeah, I think that at the university and again, I think Mustafa will say some of the same things. We know that the 21st century skills are not the same skills that students needed 30, 40 years ago. It's not enough to learn about accounting. It's not enough to learn about biology. When you look at the education system, the higher education system in Indonesia, it's very linear, right? And so, you go study accounting, and so you study accounting.
Yes, and it's all about grades, and it's all about.
You study accounting year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. A short way to think about it is if you go to school for 4 years and study nails, then the solution to every problem looks like a hammer.
A hammer, absolutely.
And so the relevant skills that we need today are exactly the ones that you'd mentioned. It's the ability to solve complex problems.
Exactly. Especially when robots and will start taking over some of our jobs anyway. These are the kind of
And we
things.
have to be able to transition into other jobs. And so if you're able to solve complex problems, if you're able to collaborate with other people and work in teams, we know that the future of work is really working in teams, working in groups. It's not individuals sitting behind a desk anymore. So creativity and innovation is also a vital skill to try to teach through education, beginning in primary, secondary school. And then finally, communication is an absolutely vital skill. We see this whether we're doing surveys in Brazil or in Germany or in the US or in Indonesia. When you ask employers what they're looking for, those are the skills that they're looking for. And so the way we get at it is by using an American curriculum. Again, we're a licensed university in Indonesia, but we use a US curriculum because it's the best in the world at building those relevant skills for the 21st century world of work, because it's broad-based, it's interdisciplinary, it makes you think, it engages your whole mind in social sciences, humanities, natural sciences, math, communication. All of those are involved in the curriculum.
Yeah, and it prepares the young people for the future, and it's And the future is going to be, technology.
Complex, and
It's going to be
complex.
complex when we have, global problems that cannot be solved by yesterday's methods of education. Maybe we'll take another little break, but I think this is an important point to raise, how we educating the kids for the future. Tetaplah bersama kami, Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Masih bersama Insight with Desi Anwar. Kita lanjutkan perbincangan. Ada di studio bersama saya Mustafa Gversin, Director Sampurna Academy, dan juga Marshall Shot, President of Sampurna University. Marshall, I think those skills and not just technical skills, but you mentioned creativity, innovations. These are the kind of things that would be useful for the world that we're living in, the world that will be increasingly more sort of technology reliant, a world that is increasingly more complex, more where the idea of work itself, because we are preparing young people for work, but it has to start when they're young. Mustafa, what are the things, and the post-pandemic obviously, and also the lessons learned from this COVID-19 crisis, what are the kind of things that we need to be teaching our kids to prepare for the future?
Sure, I'll start this one from even before pandemic. In what we believe 5 C skills. When we talk in our school, we call creative thinking, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, and character development, which is deeply embedded in the Indonesian culture. So those are the 5 skills that we try to teach our students, because skills are transferable. But the content, you just learn it. Now we have a word called Google it. You can find the content Google, or you can find the content from the books. But skills are transferable. That is what we are trying to teach. Therefore, what we do is we use STEAM model.
STEAM,
yes, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. But the STEAM is not only a meaning of bringing those subjects together. STEAM is kind of a pedagogy that you use where change of mind, basically, how you think. It is how you teach kids, because you need to have the concepts tied with the real world problems. Why it is happening this way. You don't understand things just solely because of it is what it is. You connect that one in the world with other concepts, with other notions together. So that is what we are trying to teach the students by using the STEAM, project-based learning, problem-based learning. So basically we show them how to question things, why this is happening. That's the mother of the finding everything.
So this is why you mentioned about teachers being facilitators and mentors, right?
So, like just to give an example, during the regular school time, we were implementing project-based learning, and our teachers were thinking, how do we do this one during the virtual school time? That sounds kind of difficult. And then just recently, I saw some of the projects that they were doing, like the grade 2 students. They are doing animal habitats. Animal habitats, the teachers give them the directions, explain them, and then they do research. Because research skills are very important. They need to know how to access the data, how to access the information. And then they use this one to develop their habitat of their own. So they create a project, and they have to explain this one to their peers, rather than teachers explaining what's happening in the animal habitat.
So they need to discover the answers for themselves.
They have to own their learning. Basically, when we say maybe it's cliche, but we tell them learn how to learn.
Yes.
That is the important skills that they need to understand.
You're teaching them how to think.
Correct.
Not to give them the answers.
And I love that one. And then I saw, this is on the student side when I see. But I see also teacher also should adapt those skills, right? On the technology side, you're not in the classroom to show, oh, I can use this one. I can use pen and pencil. And then I saw one teacher. She is using the smartboard software, teaching through online. She put that one on her iPad, the tablet, and then she is using the smartboard to teach kids online. So basically she is using online smartboard. And it is not different than another teacher during the regular day. I saw he did not have document camera to reflect the book that the kids did not have. It was a resource book. And he wanted to reflect that one to board, but he couldn't. Then what he did is, he's being creative. So he has a laptop, which is already connected to the projector. So he uses the camera of the laptop as the document reader and reflects it. So those kind of teachers now, having that skill, that creativity, that critical thinking, reflecting it in the virtual school and using the smart board in online version. So those are all happening. So
Now, Mustafa mentioned character. I mean, you have communication skills, obviously, that's very important, collaboration, that's very, but this character, every child is different. I mean, is this something that's being addressed as well? Because that's one of the things that, exams, you treat everybody as the same and you measure everybody with the same kind of, measurements, but how do you address each child's
I hear you. This is always a challenge, right? Especially on the virtual school time, it is even bigger challenge. In the classroom, we already have a personalized learning, individualized learning. So every child is different. They learn different. Some of them kinesthetic, some of them more visual, some of them are different ways. And that's going to continue in the virtual school as well. Now, what we do is our teachers have, of course, when we talk individualized learning, it doesn't mean that I teach one by one to each child, but we cater their needs according to what they need to learn. Our teachers will explain it, and then they do differentiate.
Yeah.
Differentiate means, okay, this child will need something like this one, because when you meet with them, when you talk with them, when you see the reactions from them, you know what they need in time, and then you help them one by one how they need to learn. The character building that we are talking now, we are calling ourselves international schools with Indonesian values. Because
which is important.
It is very important.
In Indonesia.
It is indeed very important, because our kids are Indonesians. They are going to be here. They are going to be living in this country, and we try to create the leaders of Indonesia for the future. If they are going to be leaders, I better have them have some moral values. Otherwise, they will be villains, right? We don't want that one.
Okay, Marshall, what about her from your end? I mean, you mentioned that it's the curriculum or the method. It's American. Style university. Tell us a little bit more, especially nowadays with. I know that on a lot of the universities in the U.S. are also going online, and how can you benefit from the U.S. connection and the resources that you can tap into?
Again, I mean, there's a couple of things. There have been a lot of studies that have been done over the last few years looking at higher education systems. QS came out, I think, in 2017, so the U.S. had the best higher education system in the world. A couple of years later, U.S. News and Clarivate Analytics did the same kind of thing, right? And it's always the top places. It's the U.S., it's the U.K., it's Canada, Germany, France. And again, the strength of the U.S. system, every time you look at these studies, it's built on this research foundation where, U.S. universities are really at the center of creativity and innovation. They have leading edge curriculum, and they have a very different teaching framework than you find in other parts of the world that are particularly good at instilling these 21st century skills in their graduates, right? So when you look at the curriculum that we use, it's the same curriculum that you would find at a U.S. institution, right?
Without having to go to the U.S.
Without having to go to the U.S. We work with two institutions. One's Broward College in Florida, which is ranked number 3 among community colleges. And then our university partners, the University of Arizona, which is one of the top research universities in the world. They're top 20 National Science Foundation. They're number 5 for NASA funding. Top 40 public university in the U.S., number 52 in the world. Because of our partnership with those institutions, and because we align with U.S. accreditation standards, students can come to Semporna University and they can earn U.S. credits from our partner institutions. He even earned degrees from the University of Arizona.
Are they perhaps they're disappointed not being able to go to the States and do some of the, because at the moment everything is.
Sure, and one of the great things about the partnership is that, again, we've got 2 really great partnerships, and if a student, for example, is studying at Semporna University in one of our degree programs, say in mechanical engineering, and they really want to have a U.S. experience, they're able to go spend a semester at the University of Arizona. University of Arizona doesn't charge them international tuition. And so they still get to have that.
Just not yet.
Well, not yet. Not yet. I mean, hopefully sometime next year. But again, they have that opportunity as well. And then for other students who want to go overseas to study, we see a lot of students that came back to Indonesia this year who were in the U.S. and they've enrolled with us because they know their credits are going to count when they go back. And historically, what we have is students who will spend a year or two at Samporna University. They'll transfer into a school in the U.S. or Canada, and they only have 2 years left to complete.
Then, Marshall, just very quickly, because we're reaching the end of our show, perhaps if parents or students are worried about this year and the school time that they're missing, well, what's your message? I mean, what can we learn from it? At least we know what can we benefit from this crisis.
Yeah,
there should be opportunity as well behind every crisis.
Again, and I know we're short on time, but McKinsey did a study recently, and I'd really encourage your viewers to take a look at it, because one of the things it talks about is how can Indonesia emerge stronger from the pandemic. They spent a lot of time talking about education. What this is doing is it's exposing the digital divide, which is it's critical that it be fixed. It's exposing that teachers, great educators, need tools and they need support to become more effective teachers. So that comes out of the study. It also talks about how a country as big and as massive as Indonesia must embrace online learning. And so, again, I'd encourage people to look at the full report, but from the university's perspective, what I want people to understand is we're not going to take a step back. After the pandemic is over, we're going to go forward. We're not going to abandon the lessons that we've learned, because it can make us a stronger institution. And I think for Indonesia as a whole, a lot can be leveraged that comes out of this current crisis.
Okay, perhaps your message to...
The message is that change is inevitable. Everything is changing. Right now, this pandemic showed us that the learning, teaching and learning is not confined within the four walls of the classroom. It can go beyond, and it should go beyond that one. And what we see is the students, parents, and teachers who are resilient to this change will be successful in the future. And this shows that the technology, embedding the internet, embedding the online learning, is going to be part of the future. And since it is there, we have to embrace and try to learn it. And we have seen it that's working. There are ways how it works. So if we can add those valued experiences to the future and make our in-class teaching more relevant to students, to the parents, and to the world, then we will make sure that our kids and our country is successful.
Okay, very important messages. I mean, this crisis is actually a teaching moment. This is a time for all of us to learn, to embrace change, and to expect the unexpected, and to grow better and stronger because of it. And I hope this is the sort of life lessons that we're all getting in every sector of our life. Thank you very much, Mustafa, and also Marshall. Wish you all the best. That's all.
Thank you.
Health is wealth at the moment. Iya, demikian Insight with Desi Anwar kali ini. Jangan lupa Anda juga dapat menyaksikan tayangan ini di cnnindonesia.com dan di YouTube CNN Indonesia. Insight with Desi Anwar. Jangan lupa stay safe, jaga jarak, selalu pakai masker, rajin cuci tangan, dan hindari keramaian. Bye-bye.